Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are calling in from, anywhere in the world. We want to welcome you to this quarterly conversation. Is this sacred dance? It's always a nourishing experience when we can connect, communicate, and collaborate globally in real time. It's pretty cool that we're all over the place doing this. So I welcome you with open arms, and I thank you for what I know will be a dancing dialogue. First of all, this will be in English, and I will try to speak slow. That is not my strong point. So if I'm going too quickly or any of us are, put a little note in the chat and we will try to slow it down a little bit. So my name is Wendy Morel, and I am currently the president of the Sacred Dance Guild, and I'm zooming in from Ottawa, Canada. Love you to put in the chat, and some of you have already done that, who you are and where you're zooming in from. I know that in addition to the Sacred Dance Guild villagers that are here today, we are welcoming many people, members from the International Dance Council, and they may not be familiar, or you may not be familiar with our organization. So before we start the panel, I'll just say a few words and sort of bring you up to date with who we are. So this thing called the Sacred Dance Guild began in the mid-1950s in New England, which is a northeastern area of the United States. Initially, it was a few dancers who lived in close proximity to each other, and they gathered to talk about how do I bring my dance world into my spiritual experience. So they formed things that at the time were called rhythmic choirs or dance choirs in their own religious communities. This was pretty revolutionary at the time in that area. So they were a group of, there was some Christian community, there was a few people from the Jewish community, and there was at least one gentleman from the Unitarian community who was a minister who subscribed to not a particular faith. So from its inception, the Sacred Dance Guild was what one would call interfaith or interspiritual. Many of those who started the organization were trained dancers, often in modern or contemporary dance. And they were now the directors of these things called dance choirs. And many of the people coming into these dance choirs had maybe some training in dance, some of them none at all, but they really loved to move, and they saw it as a connection of mind, body, spirit. So at the time, the stated purpose of the organization was to stimulate dance as a religious art form and to provide a means of communication and training for dance choirs. That was the beginning. Well, interest grew very quickly around the United States and into Canada at the time. So in 1958, it was incorporated as the Sacred Dance Guild, which is a nonprofit charitable trust. It has a volunteer board of directors, many who are here today with us, and it's funded through membership fees, through donations, supporters, and some programs. Now, over the years, from 1958, that whole concept continued to expand, shift while we consider that question, what is under that umbrella of sacred dance? In the 60s, there was great interest in many of the Eastern and the somatic arts, so yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, some of the movement things that were beginning, Nia, authentic movement, Pilates, ecstatic dance, interplay, journey dance, a lot of different things, sacred circle dancing, and of course, many specific cultural dance forms, so belly dance, Indian temple dance, indigenous movements. So all of these were now coming under this bigger, broader umbrella. And that concept of sacred and spiritual component sort of created this mosaic that became more complex in depth and in breadth. And it reflected that change in what was happening in the world even, and certainly in the North American community. So the word religious was then shifted to be spiritual and open this whole concept that said it's a very big umbrella and many, many things can fit under it. And hence these conversations this year, what is this thing called sacred dance? What does that look like? So the guild itself embraces all movement, all dance forms, and all people who participate. Professional dance performers, educators, teachers, lecturers, like many of you are, but also people who just love to dance and love to move and see it as something that speaks to their soul. So all of those come under that same umbrella. So if you haven't done so, we invite you to check out our website and to note particularly our statement, our mission statement that explains in detail all of these things. And it continues to evolve too as we continue to understand what that means through these kind of conversations. So I want to mention two things that are specific to the North American experience. Today is June 19th. In the United States, that's commonly known as Juneteenth. And this is a word that has been around for a long time, but just this week, a new bill was passed in the United States, and it was making Juneteenth a federal holiday. It commemorates when the last enslaved African American learned that they were free, which was about 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation freeing slaves. So that is really cool. And in Canada also, we had a new bill introduced this week to create a new national holiday. This one is to commemorate the tragic legacy of what were called residential schools, where our Indigenous children were forcibly taken from their families. The date of that is going to be September 30th, and it will become what's called a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation with our Indigenous communities, which one of our panelists is part of, creating an opportunity for Canadians to learn about and reflect on what was a dark chapter in our country's history, and to commemorate the survivors, the families, and their communities. So I personally would like to give deep bows for these important actions taken in our collective experience this week. So it's kind of cool that we have all you here to share that with. So right now I want to spotlight one of our members, Jessica Abahar. Jessica, you can spotlight yourself. She's the founder and director of The Moving Prayer, as well as a dancer, choreographer, instructor. You can check out her website called The Moving Prayer. There's Jessica. Today, she's going to be dancing over the keyboards as our technical guru, which is skills that she's been embracing, especially during this last couple of years. So if you have any issues or challenges, put that in the chat, and Jessica will be sort of trying to monitor that. We'd ask you to keep your microphones off like they are off. Thank you. Just so that we can hear what we want to hear. And also, your videos can be on when the panelists are introducing themselves. Many of them have video clips. Sometimes if you turn your video off, that can assist in bandwidth and keeping it down. So you might want to try that if you find the videos are looking just a little sort of wonky. As I mentioned, we are delighted to have members of the CID, the International Dance Council. And I'd like to right now introduce you to Dr. Constantine Contogenianis, and I probably said that incorrectly, so you can say it correctly. He is a member of the executive committee, and he's responsible for this fairly new program the last 2 years called Dance and Spirituality. So I'm going to turn it over to Constantine to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. The International Dance Council is the official partner of UNESCO concerning dance since 1973. Our goal is to spread through dance the ideals of UNESCO to every country. Which are those ideals which interests us is the cultural diversity, the dialogue of culture, the conservation of immaterial inheritance, and education for all, to mention the principal ones. And how we translate them through dance, we are open to all dances of humanity, from shamanism to street art. To all countries, we have members in about 170 countries, but we want to make them all. To all professionals, which means that the fact to be a member, this does not mean that you are a ballet star, but you have the similar ideals. We also have members as federations, dance school, companies, and also professionals who are in research about dance, dance therapists, whoever. So in general, we are a kind of umbrella to cover all those things. Events are realized by our members, and the most engaged of them create local associations, which are called sections and which represent us. Between what we call our programs, which are activities which have to perdure, we have a huge directory of about 500,000 addresses of dancers all over the world. So if you want to know who does tango in Warsaw, Poland, you type the words and you have a list of them. We also are interested in the education of dance. So we have international certification of dance studies for meritant students of our member schools. And now, very recently, there is a particular program concerning dance and spirituality. This program is very, very huge because it concerns, of course, the relations between spirituality and all kinds of dances. And there are about thousands of living spiritualities actually in the planet. We have those who have existed. So there is a big work on this. But we also have the way that people are feeling the sacred inside themselves and how they express it. And there is a particularity also concerning Christianity. Christianity has a very, very rich heritage in poetry and music, either in the various churches, from Armenians, Ethiopians to liturgical dancers, also by great composers. But we dance very little on this huge inheritance. So we have a big work. I would like to congratulate Mrs. Wendy Morrell. I knew about Sacred Dance Guild before I met her. We are very, very happy that Sacred Dance Guild is an active member of International Dance Council. And now that we have this big program which fits what you are doing, we hope to do many, many things in the future. I'll leave you the links to our website of CID and the website in construction on dance and spirituality. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Constantine. And we will send out after this is over, we'll send out links and all kinds of things. So just before we start, we need to move because we are about the sacred dance and we've engaged our brain and we've engaged that. So I want to engage our bodies. For those of you who choose to join in, we have the Sacred Dance Guild has an official song and movement piece. It was done in 2008 by singer, songwriter, choreographer, dancer Emmeline Marino, who is from San Diego, California. And she created a simple chant, the chant of the four directions or moving mysteries, which we are all moving mysteries. So what we're going to do is it's simple. It repeats 7 times. So you have lots of time and you just follow along with my movement. Jessica will put the music on. I'll demonstrate the movement the first and second times, and then you can join in whenever you feel called, or if you just want to watch it, that's okay too. But after the first time, I'm going to ask Jessica to put it on gallery so that we can see everybody moving together before we dive into this panel. So Jessica, we start, everybody, just we can shake ourselves out a little bit. Get ready. Start with your hands at your hearts. We reach out. People of the east, one hand. We reach out with the other hand. We bring it down and the rising of the sun. Reaching forward. Reaching back. Making a big moon. I'm going to stand up. People of the east, people of the west, come dance in the rising of the sun. Forward. People of the north, people of the south, moving mysteries, we are one. One more time, and then we're gonna. People of the east, people of the west, come dance in the rising of the sun. People of the north, people of the south, moving mysteries, we are one. I'm going to turn and do it in each direction. You can join me if you like. People of the east, people of the west, come dance in the rising of the sun. People of the north, people of the south, moving mysteries, we are one. Okay, we'll finish.
People of the north, people of the south, moving mysteries we are one. Moving mysteries we are one. Moving mysteries we are one.
Thank you all so much for joining in. And we are moving mysteries. So now I'd like to introduce you to another moving mystery. Our moderator today is Hia Sama. She's also an SDG member. She's a writer, a dancer, an educator. She writes about dance, somatics, embodied knowledge, health, creativity, and imagination. In 2018-19, she was inaugural fellow at Columbia University's Institute for Ideas and Imagination in Paris, France. In 2017, she was a fellow at the dance division of the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. She is taught at Columbia University, New York University, the University of Tennessee, the Paris College of Art, and Columbia Global Centers in Paris. Dr. Saumaya is completing a book on creativity and the artistic process of the choreographer Jerome Robbins. I'm sure you've all heard of him. Her publications have appeared in international academic journals. She writes a regular column on dance and somatics for the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Therapies. She's a certified instructor of somatic movement practices. She teaches online and in person. She does workshops on sensory-based dance methods, somatic strength training, kinesthesia, and the imagination and somatic awareness. She has written on sacred dance and spiritual elements in somatic dance practices. And her newest article, coming out soon, I think, is in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Therapy. So I am so delighted to have my very good friend, Hia. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Wendy, Sacred Dance Guild, International Dance Council, the dear panelists, and all of you, our audience members. Big welcome to everybody from Paris. To introduce this panel, I just wanted to say that the goal of this panel is to bring together perspectives from different faith traditions to start the very big discussion on what is sacred dance when looked at from different spiritual practices. So we are mostly interested in this panel in our panelists' personal and embodied experiences with their faith traditions. Okay, so I'm going to briefly introduce each of the panelists, and I'll also remind you that if you want to read the full bios, they are available on the website of Sacred Dance Guild. And then each of the panelists has a few minutes to introduce their work to you. And after that, we'll have a brief panel discussion on some questions. At any point, if you'd like, you can pose your questions in the chat. And during the question and answer period, we will tackle some of them. Yes, hopefully all of them, we'll see. Okay, so first on the panel, we have Judith Rose, who is the founder of a movement practice called Vital Movement. She is an experienced educator, choreographer, poet, and movement artist. Her really rich background draws from Jungian studies, literature, world mysticism. She is a certified practitioner of Otiyot Heyot, which is a Kabbalistic mindfulness practice. She has studied and trained with David Leventhal, who is the director of the Mark Morris Dance for Parkinson's disease program. And this experience inspired Judith Rose to create her own approach toward movement for the people who are advanced in age. Most recently, she collaborated with filmmaker Lucas Ruderman and created a dance requiem called Wisteria to honor the lives of those who died during the COVID pandemic. Second on the panel, we have Rani Ramaswamy, who has been a choreographer, performer, and a teacher of Bharatanatyam, which is the classical dance of South India, in Minneapolis, Minnesota since 1978. She founded Ragamala Dance Company in 1992 and currently serves as a co-artistic director, choreographer, and principal dancer, along with her creative partner and her daughter, Aparna Ravaswamy. Their very unique vision in the performances and the teachings that they offer combines the rich traditions and deep philosophical roots of their Indian heritage, and then their experiences as first generation Indian Americans. So we see in her work this interesting combination of classical language of Bharatanatyam and the contemporary Western aesthetic. Then, next on the panel, representing the point of view of North American First Nations is Karen Pheasant, who is an Anishinaabe dancer, educator, writer, and artist, as well as an orator from Weequampong on Manitoulin Island, Ontario. She is a PhD candidate in Educational Policy Studies, Indigenous Peoples Education at the University of Alberta, and also an assistant professor at Mount Royal University in the Treaty 7 region. Very exciting news is that she recently published a book called Powwow, a celebration through song and dance. And we are all very excited. Yes, there it is, the beautiful book. Look, beautiful cover also. We're very excited to hear more about this book, and also wanted to mention that this book was nominated for a 2021 Yellow Cedar Award by the Ontario Library Association. Next on the panel, representing Sufi point of view is Banafsheh Sayad, who is a Persian master dance artist and a transformational teacher. She communicates the universal message of Sufi mysticism and divine feminine wisdom in a passionate and also meditative way. What's really interesting about her practice and her choreography is that it combines and moves between trance and directed movement. So we get the sense that the movement is very precise, but at the same time has this quality of abandonment and freedom. The choreographies also combine the feminine and the masculine energy, body and soul, light and dark. And what is really important for Banafsheh is the invoking of ancient roots of dance as a devotion, as a prayer, as an adoration. She also brings to her rich movement practice her background as an acupuncturist. So she draws from the Taoist view of the internal functioning of the body to uncover even deeper layers of healing and rejuvenation through movement. Her dance company called Nama has presented all over the world. And most recently, her 2011 dance film, In the Fire of Grace, with the collaborator Andrew Harvey, traces Rumi's journey of the soul in dance. And then we have John West, who as a child studied dance at the Lester Horton School of Dance and then also studied tap. He has many distinguished degrees, such as degrees in psychology with a minor in dance, a degree in folklore and mythology from UCLA with an emphasis on biblical literature and dance. He has been teaching in independent schools in Los Angeles and elsewhere. He teaches academic subjects as well as directs plays and teaches dance and choreographs musicals. He has been an active dancer and choreographer in the field of sacred and liturgical dance since 1967. And he also works as an artistic director of the Palermo Dancers, and continues to work as a leader of sacred and liturgical dance workshops and as an independent educational consultant on equity and social justice. So a big welcome to all of you. We're excited to learn more from you and hear your perspectives on what it's like to embody and feel the sacred dance. So I'm going to turn the microphone first to Judith. What would you say, or what would you show us to tell us more about your work?
Thank you so much. In Hebrew, the language of my Jerusalemite family, we are taught from early on, Potchim bechvod achsanya, which means we open by giving honor to the host. Therefore, I would like to take a moment in the manner of my ancestors to thank both the SDG and the CID for inviting me to participate in today's sacred gathering. My father's father was a master of scribal arts and an illuminator of sacred Hebrew texts. He died at a very young age, way before I was born. But I know that I am his granddaughter. I too am drawn to the mystical wing of Hebrew tradition, known as Kabbalah, the receiving. I too love the movement and dance of letters, but I am drawn even more to the white spaces between the letters. And it is here, in this in-between, in the white space, where the great mystery of the creative process unfolds for me. I'm engaged with that process every day of my waking and very often, to my chagrin, sleeping life. But I understand very little about it, how it works, how it happens. So I stand under it instead, and I listen. I listen to words, I listen to silence, I listen to breath, I listen inside myself, I listen outside myself, I listen to eyes, I listen to smiles, I listen to tears, I listen to movement. Much of my professional work is rooted in the world of movement as teacher, choreographer, therapeutic practitioner, ritual maker, and guide. Through the years, my curiosity has led me to study movement forms, especially those with healing implications from many parts of the globe. Several years ago, in an effort to follow the guidance of very well-meaning friends and colleagues who urged me to do something not work-oriented for a change, I entered the studio of a young Russian dance teacher with many gold medals to his name. I wanted, I thought, to study the Argentine tango. But that is when Divine Mother came out of her heavenly closet and gave a very big wink. That young teacher subsequently became my collaborator and friend. Over the past 3 years, we have made 3 dance films that have gone on to festivals nationally and internationally. We are now in the final post-production stages of our new film, Wisteria, a dance requiem dedicated to the memory of those who died during the COVID pandemic, and also dedicated to the loved ones who now mourn them. The film was shot and directed by Lucas Rudiman, with whom we've worked before. It begins with a shamanic ritual and ends with one which you won't see. The clip that Jessica will now show you is from some pieces from the very middle part of the film. I hope that at some point we'll have an opportunity to share the whole film together. My movement offering today is inspired by the Hebrew letter Kuf. It is the first letter of the word Kadosh, and if you look at the letter, it has 2 parts, this beautiful cupola, or this wavy roof above, and a vertical line below. The mystics of Kabbalah teach that the top part of the letter, the roof part of the letter, represents the transcendent realm, and the vertical line going down strongly into the belly of the earth represents the immanent face of the divine. They teach that we must infuse our lives with both, the spiritual and the day-to-day physical aspects of holiness, of the sacred. The movement goes like this. We'll take the kuf off the screen and I'll show you how it goes. So move back a little bit. We bring our right arm strongly up from the earth with power and strength. And then we form this beautiful transcendent realm above, circling around. And then this idea of integrating both equally into our lives. And then we release and let it go. 2 times without words, just movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy, so much for this poetical and moving introduction. I forgot to mention that we asked each of the panelists to also incorporate a little movement gift to the audience members. So that's why they're including a little movement sequence also. Next, we have Rani. Rani, I believe, wants to start with the clip of her work, yeah?
The photograph, please. The photograph first. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be here among these amazing choreographers, performers, and we all have this common idea of spirituality. I work and create work, perform and practice Indian classical dance style called Bharatanatyam. It's a Hindu art form, and I came to the United States in 1978 and have been practicing this art form since then. Bharatanatyam is believed to have very long history, ancient roots, going back to almost 2000 years. We believe that dance in India was created by the gods for the enjoyment of people. And until the early 1900s, this dance was only performed in the Hindu temples during festivals and celebrations. It's also a classical dance form requiring a lifetime of study. So I started studying this dance form when I was 7 years old, and I still continue to learn from a teacher in India. The dance form itself has just a vocabulary of rhythmic movements and gestures. Each of these gestures, there are about 40 to 48 gestures, are considered the silent language through which we communicate with God. So every gesture, just like we write our grammar and composition in our language, these gestures have to be done correctly so that we don't miscommunicate. Along with the rhythm, the gestures, music, and poetry, the creative component is limitless. So we can do, it's up to the choreographer to decide what the theme she or he wants to create, but you speak that in your dance language, which is that of Bharatanatyam. Since 1980, I have diligently educated audiences, presenters, and funders in the United States to understand and appreciate this form. To make this dance accessible, education and outreach has been a large part of my work. I founded Ragamala Dance in 1992, which I run with 2 of my daughters. And our work is presented in venues such as the Kennedy Center, Lincoln Center, to name a few. We often collaborate with artists of other cultures to find common areas of connection, whether it be music, rhythm, spirituality. The idea of seeking is a recurring theme in our performance. We aim for excellence and spirituality in our work with our collaborators. Today, I'll show a short clip from a piece called Written in Water, in which Sufi epic poem Conference of the Birds and the Hindu spiritual game board of snakes and ladders come together. Since the language is in Tamil, I just would like to give you a few lines of what they mean. In fire, you are heat. In the flower, you are the smell. In words, you are truth. In rule, you are love. In a tree, you are the sap. In the scriptures, you are the meaning. The heat in the sun, the mark on the moon, you are everywhere, you are everything. This is the last part of the piece. The music was composed by Amir El-Safar, a Iraqi maqam singer and trumpet player, and he sings along with the South Indian composer, singer. The gesture that I bring to you is when the two fingers come together, the thumb and the pointing finger, this is the Paramatma, which is he's God. This is Jivatma, our life. When they come together, the Jivatma and the Paramatma meet. So you keep one by your chest and bring one to your chest, and that you understand. One more time. You bring the left towards the chest, the right towards the chest, and you understand. That is the seeking that we seek, is to meet the human with the divine. Thank you.
Thank you, Rani, for this insightful introduction. Karen, you're next.
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Bonjour, Danse. Greetings, fellow dancers, uh, academics, writers, artists, administrators. Welcome, all of you. I bring greetings right now. I originate from Manitoulin Island, which is in the Great Lakes, about approximately 6 hours north of Toronto. And I am on my way to see family and ceremonies in Saskatchewan right now. I see that there was somebody here from Saskatchewan. So it's a long drive. It's a 25-hour drive. So I'm almost halfway. I'm 15 hours from home. So I'm honored. I For those to the audience, none of us panel members, I don't think we haven't met each other, and I'm so honored to be a part of this collective. Thank you, Wendy, for bringing us all together. Thank you for the Guild for putting this quarterly on. It is with honor that I sit here. So right now, actually, I sit here, I'm traveling, and I'm at one of my relatives' home. I'm here, actually, ironically, I'm in Treaty 3, which is in Northern Ontario. I'm just beside the Manitoba border. Treaty 3 is the home of the Shibegashigegan. The dance that you saw me dance with my daughter, by the way, is the Shibegashigegan is the jingle dress. It's what our people refer to as the healing dance. And it's not just the dance itself, it's a whole, I set a timer, and so I have a tendency, I could talk about a whole 12-week course on this. And so I have 5 minutes. So somebody's going to have to do a 1 minute, and then I'll just stop at wherever I am. I've been dancing the jingle dress for a few decades. Like my colleagues, I've choreographed and artistically directed, worked at the Banff School of Fine Arts, and did a lot of background. Right now, I'm a professor, and I teach in humanities, Indigenous studies. And as I always tell my students, this is my day job. My real life is as an artist and as a dancer. And so our dance has, like all of you, has been put to a halt because of the pandemic. So I wanted to share is there is so much details. The important point that we need to understand is how colonialism impacted our sacred practices. All of our dances had sacred meaning and were part of our ceremonies. And so I did this book, and I have a whole chapter in here talking about, because most people think of powwow dance as a Wild West, beads and feathers, oh, entertaining. But just as Ronnie explained, these had spiritual roots. They were only done in societal settings. And then the government wanted to tell the world that we weren't vanishing. So they made these world fairs and Wild West shows to kind of let the world think, see, the Indians, we were in those days referred to as Indians, and the federal government changes. So thank you for the introductions. You said Wikwemikong so well. Nobody can usually, that's the name of my reserve. And I'm Anishinaabe, which is I'm part of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. And so the federal government, when they were trying to extinguish us, they had us showcased and what I call the beads and feathers. So generally that's what the public sees. And so when I did this book, which is categorized as a children's book, I did a whole chapter on how colonialism impacted us. And then I did a whole chapter on, some people think there was only one. When I asked my students, how many nations do you think? They think there's a people called Aboriginal, which is one of the labels that the federal government assigns to us. In the US, it's Native Americans. In the 70s or 60s, it was Indians. Some places were indigenous, some places were First Nations. I use the term because it was what I was raised as an Indian, or Anishinaabe is the correct. And I always say to my students, who's here, Italian, Polish, or Greek? And I said, you never say you're European, you usually name the country that you're from. So likewise, I am Anishinaabe, I'm a part of the Three Fires Confederacy. So we have separate languages, we have separate dances. the Shibegashigegan, the jingle dress dance, came from my people, the Anishinaabe people. And then it became appropriated, adopted, and spread out throughout North America. Oftentimes, even indigenous people wearing the Shibegashigegan, the jingle dress, don't understand the original roots of it. The original roots was it was given divinely, spiritually, through a dream to many women. There are many interpretations, many popular stories, but the essence is that it came to the women of Treaty 3 area as a way to create the dress, and the creation of it, not just the dance itself, but the creation of this dress was to that dress that you saw me, those are metal cones on it. And so I caution that there's many fabricated stories out there, much like, unfortunately, a lot of indigenous knowledge. And even we have a global audience here, but I'm going to speak about a political issue right now, because what would this not be if it weren't for political, is when appropriation happens, there are reams of individuals out there claiming indigenous identity. Joseph Boyden, for example, Michelle Latimer with the CBC. And so I am the granddaughter, paternal grandparents of Sophie Ewiwe and Dominic Wasagishik. Nush, my maternal grandparents is Alfred Mishavidishma, Nush, Mary Jane Pongwish. That is the lineage in which I come from. So that, and it is all from Manitoulin Island and vicinity in area. And so when we're hearing the stories of Native North American indigenous dances, know that every geographical location, whether the USA or in Canada, certain dances and songs come specifically from those territories. And then in contemporary expression, what we call powwows is emerging, or a compilation of merging. But I really, part of the reason I did the book, and when I lecture and when I speak, is about keeping the philosophical and spiritual intent of how these came to be in this day of new age media. Actually, there's something called social distance powwow. I'm going to do a little hook. Yes.
Sorry, can we keep some of this for the later discussion also? It's so interesting. I think it relates to one of the questions that we'll ask. Is that okay?
So am I at my 5-minute mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you
Okay.
give us the movement gift also? Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so a song is comprised of 4 verses, and on the honor beats, it's acknowledging the spirits that guide and nurture us. And as you've seen, starting with your hand at your belly, sort of in the area there, and then you raise up, and you either your hand or your fan, then you acknowledge the unseen, and then it comes back down. It's very simple, and it's done 4 times throughout the song with intent. And I leave it at that. Miigwech.
Awesome, great, thank you. So don't forget the point that you wanted to make, the little pitch, make that. I'll ask you to make that in just a little bit. And now we turn to John. John, are you there?
Banafshe.
I am here. I thought Banafshe was coming.
Oh,
before.
I'm sorry. Yes, Banafshe, yes.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Dance while you can shatter your own self and pluck out the cotton from the wound of self-obsession. Ordinary people dance and frolic in the square. People of God dance in their own blood.
رندان سلامت میکنم جان را غلامت میکنم مستی ز جامت میکنم مستی ز جام
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy and honored to be with you today. I was born in Tehran, Iran, and grew up in Tehran, London, and the US. I live these days in the mountains of Topanga, California, the ancestral land of the Tongva people. From as far back as I can remember, I've had two passions, one for dance and the other for the divine, the mystery of life, that which animates but is not seen. And over time, dance, these two flames merged over time, and dance became a way for me to commune with the mystery and become a channel for the mystery to express in the world. This merging of the two flames went through different iterations as I learned different dance styles and movement modalities, explored various spiritual traditions, got a master's in Chinese medicine and an MFA in dance and choreography, all of which evolved into Dance of Oneness, the modality I've created that flows in three streams. The first stream is dance and embodiment techniques that I've drawn from my background in Persian and other Middle Eastern dances, from flamenco, Tai Chi, Qigong, the Gurdjieff circuit movements, and whirling. The second stream is wisdom teachings drawn from the divine feminine and Taoist and Sufi traditions, as well as modern science. The third stream is healing, embodying wisdom teachings, the wisdom teachings I mentioned, uncovering them in the body already brings healing and wholeness, uncovering them in the body through dance. But I also incorporate Chinese medicine, the chakra system, and neuroscience into this stream. The aim of Dance of Oneness is to unify our mind, body, heart, and soul as one and come into oneness with the greater field of being through embodying love. To me, dance is a spiritual path and a science of embodiment. So I bring these dimensions to Dance of Oneness. You mentioned that I'm going to speak from the Sufi perspective. I identify myself as a lover and resonate deeply with the feminine interpretation of the Sufi path, which is a synthesis of the heart of several traditions. This poem by the Andalusian Sufi Ibn Arabi illustrates what I mean perfectly. He says, "O marvel, a garden amidst the flames. My heart has opened to every form. It's a pasture for gazelles, a convent for Christian monks, a temple for idols and the pilgrim's Kaaba, the tablets, the tables of the Torah and the book of the Quran. I follow the religion of love. Whichever way love's camel takes me, that is my religion. That is my faith." The movement gesture I want to show you is from the whirling, from the sama, just a little abbreviation. So starting with your crossing your hands on your heart, lifting up your right hand, receiving the light, and extending your left hand down, left arm, transmitting the light through your heart. So to do that together again, cross on your heart. One, take your right arm up, right hand becoming a chalice to receive the light. And two, letting your arm stretch out, your left arm transmitting the light, and bring your hands back on your heart. So one more time, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Banafshe. That was beautiful. And then we have John.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, as so many of my colleagues have said, I'm so honored to be here with this amazing group of people. Banafshe, we are truly neighbors. You live just over the hill from me. I'm in Woodland Hills, so you're in Topanga. We should drive and meet. Um, I'm honored. Constantin did a great job of explaining the complexity of the history of dance and religion. And I want to say that I am flattered that I was asked to be a representative of the Christian tradition in dance, but it's very complex because of the variety of different approaches and comfort with dance and prayer, dance and worship, dance and the body, period. So I thought it best to talk about my particular approach. And I think it's really significant that I get to do this on a day that is filled with joy. Many of you may know that today is Juneteenth. It is the celebration of the freedom, the literal freedom of the slaves as it went across the continental United States, even after the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln. So I am a descendant of the drum and the dance. This is my faith. This is how I celebrate. And being a descendant of the drum and the dance, I cannot pray unless I am moving or that there is some sense of rhythm in my life. That said, every day of my life is in itself a prayer because my life began with the beating of my heart and the movement of my body within the womb of my mother as it was in the womb of her mother and so on back. So for me, this is a part of my African American heritage. Jessica, would you start the thank you. So let's go to the next slide. It began this way. Personally speaking and communicating in and through dance, the hidden language of the soul is in fact my way of life. Whether it is subtle through the enactment of a piece of poetry, or if it is more bold and more corporeal as a part of a dance that I'm doing. Next slide, please. My original sort of stepping into the field of sacred dance came after I graduated from college and I returned here to Los Angeles. I formed a group called the Black Orpheus Performing Artists, and we basically delved into the rich tradition of African American music and lore and made that the source of our movement. It eventually bled into what I would find later to be the future of my dance at St. Andrew's then Priory, where we took a group of dancers from the Recreational Parks Association and performed Psalms and the Lord's Prayer for the Vespers ceremony at the annual Fall Festival for the Benedictine monks. Next slide, please. That company dissolved and I had a transition when I was able to dance with Marge Champion, which I did for 7 years. And I toured with Marge through a variety of um, Presbyterian seminaries and others to talk about the importance of dance and movement in the context of worship. And these pictures are from Marge's church, where she was dedicated to bringing movement into the worship services at West Hollywood Presbyterian Church. Next slide, please. Um, in sort of a continued movement forward, I've always had a dear love for the Hebraic past because, as you know, African Americans and Jews share a similar kind of history as it relates to enslavement. So one of the things that was an appeal was the story of Judith, which we did in Israel for the International Seminar on the Bible and Dance. We did this at the Yimka in Jerusalem, and even got a notice about it in Dance Magazine, which I am very proud of. Next slide, please. The monastery continued to be a source of um, great opportunity for us as we began to tell a variety of biblical stories or to simply celebrate the Psalms through dance. Next slide, Jessica, please. They went from literally the biblical stories through modern interpretations of those or through celebrations of Saint Benedict and some of the other saints. Next slide, please. I did 3 ballets for the company. It was there at the Abbey. You'll see on the left slide, one of my dearest friends is Carla De Sola, who happened to dance in God's Troubadour with us. The woman in the foreground is my wife, Consuelo, and she's in 2 or 3 of these other pictures as well. It's a family venture, so to speak. So as others were saying, it is a way of life. My daughter, my wife, my son have all danced with me, and I didn't have to twist their arms too frequently. Next slide, please. If you can run this, this is it isn't the actual music that is danced to, but this is the last of the presentations that we did in concert. This is the Festival of Lessons and Carols, and it'll give you a sense at least of the scope of the movement that we do. Jess, are you going to play it, or do I? There you go. Okay.
O come, Emmanuel, to free your captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, O Israel, to you shall come and even Emmanuel, captivum solvi Israel, qui gemet in exilio.
Yes, it is.
Privatus Dei Filii. Israel.
Yeah, I probably used that time and I'm fine. Um, the um, the movement sequence is something that I learned from an octogenarian some years ago who also studied Dalcroze. She also worked, I also had an opportunity to work with Seda Gerard, who did the same. And it goes something like this. I clothe myself sacredly round with infinite love and wisdom, reaching back with love, other side with love, and then up and above with infinite love and wisdom, which we give back to the earth. Okay, it's right in front of the Spanish, so the arms are reaching out. Again, I'm starting with my right hand. I clothe myself sacredly round with infinite love and wisdom, reaching back with love, back to the heart, with infinite love, bring it back to the heart, and wisdom. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for this rich introduction. So let's move on to the panel discussion now. And this can be really a free form discussion. The questions I'll ask you are big questions, I know. So we'll see what emerges as a response to these questions that can actually each be written about as a book. Okay, so the first question I have for you is, in your view and in your embodied, your physical experience, what makes dance spiritual or sacred? So, for example, is it about the intention that you set for the dance? Is it about following particular ritualized steps or movements? Is it about music? Is it about your physical sensations? Is it about being part of a historical lineage? What makes dance sacred? And anybody can go. I can also point towards somebody. Actually, I want to point, maybe give the mic to Banafshe, because I accidentally messed up the order. So maybe we hear from you first.
Sure. Great question. I feel that it's about the intention and the focus. That is what, for me, constitutes, oh, that's what for me makes the dance sacred, dance spiritual. Of course, we have dances that are traditionally considered sacred dance, but not necessarily doing those dances makes them sacred, actually, if the intention is not there, in my mind. And the same with sacred music. You can be dancing to sacred music, but that doesn't necessarily make your dance sacred if the intention is not there. Same with the sacred site, sacred place. But if you do have the intention and you are doing a traditionally sacred dance that has been done for generations, then you're joining in something bigger, and you're stepping into a tried and true, let's say, tried and true postures and movements that have been evolved over time. And you connect with the field of people having done those dances forever and ever. And with the sacred music as well, your dance is magnified even more when the intention is there. And the site, of course, the telluric site of the earth adds to this magnification of the intention. Um, I can give you an example. I was blessed to be able to dance in the labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral, and I was whirling in the Chartres Cathedral labyrinth. And in some instances, it was with a group of people who were chanting and in deep contemplation, singing, and it was a very transformative. It was a number of transformative experiences. The telluric site of this cathedral, the sacred site, and the sacred shape of the labyrinth and the focus of the people who were there made it much more transformative for me and for the people who were witnessing if I were just, let's say, whirling in another location. So that's how I think about it. I'd love to hear others.
Can I answer the same question?
Yes, and then Judith after you. Yes, Rani.
Yeah, I think Benafshe said it perfectly. I come from a particular culture, but there are dancers who come from that same culture, youngsters who come from that same culture. But you have to be open to this spirituality. Like in Hinduism, it's a creative religion. You see God in everything. So if you're dancing about a leaf, that's God. If you step on paper, that symbolizes the goddess of education and the arts. So from young age, you're taught to embody that spirituality. You don't have to be in a temple to see God. God is everywhere and in everything. And our dance is a direct conversation because we can have a personal relationship with God. God can be your lover. God can be your child. God can be your mother. You can scold God. You can scream at God. You can complain to God. Now, if you are open to that kind of emotional lived experience and you dance, you pour that into your dance, definitely that's a feeling which transcends not only you but also the audience that watches you. But I think it is not something you can try to teach, but not everybody from a particular culture can have that. A person from a completely different culture who's open to spirituality can embody that same feeling in doing our dance that another Indian person won't. So it is that intention, it is how you are a seeker. The more a seeker you are, the better performer you are.
Thank you so much. Judith.
I want to mention two principles of Kabbalah. One is Havdalah, and that means discernment, distinction, dedication. So what Banafshe said was so beautiful to me because I also believe that consecration, dedication, having a sacred intention makes something spiritual. And the second point from Kabbalah that I want to introduce is the word tiferet. It's usually translated as beauty, but it's so much richer and so much more potent than that. The quality of tiferet is a beauty that's inseparably bound to truth and to the eternal. And I feel that is another quality that makes a dance sacred. The choice of music, the costuming, the choreographic patterning, the important elements, they're all very important. However, they are just garments. If the dance doesn't have this quality of eternal beauty, of truth, of what John Keats said, truth is beauty and beauty is truth, and it doesn't have this dedication, this consecration of sacred intention, I do not believe it's sacred dance. So I believe that those two factors, sacred intention, dedication, purpose, as well as this idea of a beauty that draws on truth, on the eternal, I feel that is what offers us this magical thing called sacred dance that is so potent and so powerful.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to add? Yes, John, and then Karen.
Karen, please, you go ahead.
Thank you, John. I was grateful that I'm not familiar with the other styles of dance, and if anything, I'm just probably have just delved very tiny into the dance that John speaks of. So sometimes I think of our dance, I think all indigenous global people, their spiritual roots. And what colonization did was stop our spiritual practices. And the difference with our dances as North American indigenous people is they weren't intended for an audience. It was a way of life. It was a way of being. it was a way of spiritual practices. And once the colonialists saw that, then they quelmed it. What is often not known is there is federal legislation that stopped us. And I apologize that I keep plugging my book, but it's really important that art dance is a not only spiritual. So yes, this is what this topic today, but it's political. It's about empowerment. It's about coming out of colonial oppression. So there was actually in the federal legislation a law enforced. If we were caught dancing, we would be incarcerated, we would be penalized. And so our dance is what, I mean, although this is called powwow, a celebration through song and dance, that's a very new concoction. It's a very contemporary version, just like how we've contemporized. And John, I loved your piece on the floor doing ballet dance. But when our indigenous roots were, we all danced, we all moved. And it was a way that we celebrated. And so I want to stress that is there are no laws that one of the things in Rusty Gillette's talk in Humanity, he said, no other nation are they governed. I have a ID card of my Indian status card, and there's an expiry date on it. I don't think there's any nation, Greek, African American, Italian, that has an expiry date. So I have an expiry Indian status card. And in the US, not so much here, although they do a version here in Canada, but in the US, they do your blood quantum. You have to get your blood checked, and then they decide whether or not you're Native American. And back in the day, Native Americans, and in Canada, Indigenous people, we fell under federal jurisdiction of the interior. So the interior is agriculture, the cattle, the timber, and the Native Americans, or in Canada, timber, oil, gas, and Indigenous people. So when we're dancing today, it is such a spiritual expression that we are here and we are not banished. Hi, miigwech.
Thank you. John, please.
So first of all, Karen, that was absolutely stunning. And I guess, again, going back to the Juneteenth thing, like my Indigenous brothers and sisters, we too were really transformed by the colonial experience. The unfortunate reality is that there was also placed upon all of us, but especially as African Americans and other First Peoples, this separation between sacred and secular. There was no separation between secular and sacred within our actual historic lives. I could use a spoon that had been carved and painted by my ancestral people, and that was as spiritual and as sacred to me as anything else. It carried the weight of the ancestors with it, and I carried the ancestors with me. The dance that I do is very similar to that it reaches back and calls into presence the reality, the living reality of the people who came before me, my reality as I live it and as I give it to my own children and now my grandchildren. I think in terms of what makes it sacred in some senses here is that we're looking at this notion, for me, coming out of or borrowing from Western civilization, the notion of religion. And I'm going to go back to the etymology of the word religio, that which binds us back together. It is really about keeping us as people, keeping us as a community. That's not foreign to me. It's not foreign to Karen. I would venture to say that Banafshe and Rane are in that same boat, as are you, Judith, because this is also the history of the Hebrew nation. So what we need to do is to see that the impact of what we do in our dance is to bind the viewers and bind the participants into a single community that itself becomes blessed, becomes sacred in that context. And that sanctity is something that no one else can match in that context, because you and the one deity, the many deities have become singular in that moment. And so that to me is what motivates me, whether I'm in an audience of 30,000 people, as happens in the Religious Education Congress, or if I'm simply um, on the floor inside the monastery, or inside a retreat center of the Sisters of Social Service. It doesn't matter where, or outside. You know?
I wonder if you have any additional comments under this question of, is there a connection between your form of sacred dance and these other big phenomena such as social justice or healing from trauma or environmental concerns? These are all big questions, but maybe there's an example that you want to share with us.
I wanted to interject here. I actually, because I thought we were only on for 90 minutes, so I might have to leave, but so I wanted to respond. If you recall, a year ago on the first, actually a year ago almost to the day, but early June, after the George Floyd events in Minneapolis, a lot of my sisters, a lot of my relatives that wear this Shibigashigegan dress, they went to that intersection and the songs were sung and we danced the Shibigashigegan dance, the healing dance, because the dance has been, and that's why I guess I'm pushing the political side of what the Shibigashigegan means. It's a principle, it's a philosophy of healing, of restitution, or what Canada's calling reconciliation. There's debate on that, but it is always known that it was our dances. You look at every civil rights period, there was always dance with our American Indian movement in the 70s, which alongside with the Black Panther movement. And then if we look at the history of both African American, Native American, it's been our songs and dances that have been reclamation and been a political point.
I'm just going to interject for a sec, everybody. It is our formal closing time right around now, but I would love to continue just a little bit. I know a few people have to go, including a few of our panelists. So please don't feel at all shy to just shift on out, and we'll let it close up in a minute, and we will send stuff out after the fact. Yeah, back to you.
Yes. Any other comments on this question? Yes. John and Judith?
I just wanted to extrapolate from what Karen said, and it'll go back in two veins. I think that whenever there's been a movement that wants to become visible, we dance our way through that visibility, through the locking of arms and the movement of people in the streets and wherever else we happen to be. It is no different in terms of what we've seen in the ancient medieval churches of the processionals that took place there, because we recognize that there has always been this notion of taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but one way or the other, we move forward. There is that march that in strength we become the church united, the people united, the community united. Again, we are bound together. So I see that political action is actually another form of sacred dance, advocating for the sanctity and the love and the benefit of the people at large.
And then I think Benafshe has to leave, so maybe we ask her to contribute first and then Judith.
Well, I totally agree with what John and Karen said. I love what everyone is saying. I can sit here and listen to you all day and have this incredible conversation. I just have to go. I have a class to teach. But absolutely, the dance that I practice, the dance of oneness, and especially the whirling, the sama, is about becoming a channel for love and light in the world to transmit the healing power of love, of light, of connecting with spirit into the world. And through with our movement, with our awareness, with our intention, to bring about what is in what needs healing, whether it's people, whether it's the earth, or social conditions. And I just want to add here that in my own country, currently, women's dancing is banned in public, and just for us to also hold that we can, in the parts of the world that we're connecting from, we can dance freely. And in my country, people would be arrested if caught dancing. But at the same time, there's so many brave women who do that. Uh, every once in a while, they just in out in the streets they dance, and that has a huge impact on people because it is slowly bringing the awareness that we really need to free ourselves from this government. And as difficult as it is, they don't give up, and as dangerous as it is, they don't give up. So the power of dance is enormous. It's enormous. And the power of its healing, the healing power of it, and the power of transformation that it can bring is enormous. Thank you.
Thank you. And Judith, you have the closing words.
I believe that we are right now in a world that needs us so badly, and we have a potent tool to share as dancers, as sacred dancers. And I don't think any of us need the scientific data to know from our own experience with our congregants, our students, our fellow dancers, the healing power of movement to heal trauma. And I just want to mention a Hebrew word. The Hebrew word for the world is olam. It has the same root as the word ne'elam, which means hidden. And I feel that part of the healing is to talk about the uncertainty of life. The veil has been lifted off during the pandemic. So all of us feel this continuing uncertainty, this shaking thin and narrow bridge. But what we perhaps don't remember is that it's always a thin and narrow bridge every single day of our lives. And I feel we begin the healing of trauma by acknowledging just that all of life is a blooming ambiguity, as my teacher James Hollis said, and to really introduce our students and ourselves through our sacred dances to live in the questions, to live the questions, as Rilke said so beautifully. And I feel that by inviting, creating sacred dance and inviting sacred dancers to join us into the passion of mystery, it remains a mystery, we can embody and open up tremendous channels for healing. One of the kinds of dance that I've studied is Buto, where we actually go into the dark to come out of the dark. And I feel whatever our expression of dance is right now, we have to go into the dark to come into the light with whatever creative vision we have.
These are very fitting closing words. We're running a little bit out of time, so if you have questions, please send them to the email address that you used to register for this panel, for this conversation. And thank you so much, everybody, from the panelists, for this discussion and for bringing your work to us. Audience members, please check out their websites and read more about what they do. And Wendy, back to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Hia, and thank you, everybody. As I think Banafshe, we could talk about this all day, all week, all month, all year. It is a conversation that just keeps on going, and so much richness is contained within it. So I am, again, my deepest thanks for you for taking the time to sit in and just begin the beginning of this kitchen table conversation. It's never the end. So I so appreciate all of that. And I appreciate all of you who came today. We are recording. We will send that out so you can re-listen to some of those wise words that you'll want to listen to. And maybe let's end with just a little piece of some of the movements that everybody gave to us. So let's start together with our right hand up that Judith gave us as part of hers. We take that into our two fingers from Rani. We bring Karen's hand up as we acknowledge the unseen. And from Banashe, we cross, we receive, and we transmit. And John, who took us around the world, into the back, and we all end like we all do, with our hands wide open, with our hearts cracked open, our minds open to this kind of a conversation. I think that is what I have heard here. We are one, as we danced at the beginning. No matter how many different places we come from and the challenges we have had to get here, as Judith says, the veil is lifting. And let's all do this together. I appreciate the work of the CID in their new Dance and Spirituality, Constantine. And I look forward to the next conversation. Keep track of our website. September 25th will be the next conversation. We're looking at things like trauma and healing. And we continue this quarterly conversation. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. Thank you, Hia, for just keeping us moving along. And Jessica in the background for making all those things just happen as if they just were magical. So thank you all. Love to you all. Have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, whatever it is you're going to go off to. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye now.